приветствовать. Спасибо, что все пришли на доклад.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for coming. We have called our speech the 12 chairs.
12 стульев. Мы расскажем вам
We'll be talking about an ATP group, which is called 12. That's how they called themselves. Well, why 12 chairs? Well, we will kind of sum up. We will talk about this title later. My name is Nikita Nazarov. I'm in charge of extended research in Kaspersky, and Alexander, my colleague, is also my colleague at Kaspersky. He is a senior analyst and will be alternating while speaking. There are two parts to the speech, and in the first part, we'll talk about the activism threats in Russia. We'll talk about 12, so what people know about this in the community, what our colleagues have mentioned about it. So we'll talk about the unified kill chain, about TTPs. Why so? Because in our lab we have quite a lot of data sources and we aggregate a lot of incidents. And here we have spread this through the unified kill chain so that you cannot understand where it came from. Then we'll talk about relations to other chairs, we'll talk about mitigation, and we'll talk about our latest report. Okay, let's talk about hacktivism. February 2022. This was a starting point for a lot of groups which are sometimes self-proclaimed. They create Telegram channels, they talk about their achievements, they call for action, they mention their political positions there. And within these 2 years, we've seen quite a lot of them emerging. Some kind of announce themselves, sometimes they don't. Sometimes there are some mentioned targets and some are unmentioned. You go to TTPs, so they're all available, so you can have a look at our presentation and read about these guys. Okay, let's talk about 12. They were first mentioned in April 23, the 10th of April. They described the events politically, and they said, okay, we are here, we'll be active. What do we have in the community? They're also known as Comet, Shadow, and Dark Star. And some believe that they're related to Blackjack group. Our colleagues have mentioned them extensively. We'll fill the gaps and put forward the theories we have. A few words about the unified kill chain. I think everybody knows about this. In 2011, they came up with the cyber kill chain. Great 7 steps, it's cool, but time goes by, so they have more steps, these threat actors. And in 2017, we have a doctorate PhD thesis from the Czech Republic, and this is called the unified kill chain. And here he is more thorough, and there are 18 stages here. Why 18? So he took a cyber kill chain incident, tried to describe it, and then he invited some colleagues. He started research in a lab, then he took the red team attacks, and as a result he took ABT-28 attacks, described each and every step of the kill chain, and he highlighted the core steps the intruders should go through. And this all boiled down to these 18 steps. And the result of this research is that at the end of every unified kill chain document, you have these stages in plain language, so that you, as a high-level manager and a highly skilled, technically experienced guy can understand it equally well. Here there are 3 phases: the in, the through, and the out phases. We'll be talking about these ATP groups using these phases. Alexander will talk about the first phase, I'll talk about the middle, Alexander will conclude, and then we'll try to kind of talk about the other chairs. Sasha, the floor is yours. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Let me tell you a few words about TTPs. So quite a lot of tactics, techniques, and procedures were discovered, and we decided to map this through the unified kill chain to identify the average behavioral pattern, because all the data was taken from real investigations. We don't want to hang on specific incidents or victims. Okay, the in phase is the first steps, reconnaissance, social engineering, and all the way to penetration and persistence. Okay, social engineering and reconnaissance. We leave them out because we haven't found a single pattern for this. So let's talk about resource development. Okay, they're hacktivists, and all hacktivists use open source, unlike APTs who develop various tools, libraries, scanners. No, these guys don't care that much. They use whatever they can find in open sources. This slide shows the average toolkit of the attackers. They used almost in every attack. Some of the tools can vary. For instance, they can use ngrok, but sometimes they use chisel or sacat instead. Persexact can be replaced by packet or internal, but these are the tools in general. So they don't change their Vipers and encryption tools. Okay, delivery, which is also initial access in our usual life. In most of the incidents investigated, the attackers had access to the infrastructure of a contractor which was connected somehow, probably not through a VPN, with the customer's infrastructure. So they went to the contractor's infrastructure, they hacked systems, gained persistence, and found user certificates for VPNs. They used these certificates and the valid accounts to gain easy access to the victim's infrastructure and to use RBP to move around these RDPs using the accounts and the credentials. Okay, exploitation. In one of the incidents our response colleagues investigated showed an attack of a Russian company. They found that the fish backdoor, a web shell, was used to load it. They used two exploits mentioned in 2021 VMware Center. They had the same name shell. It's also available from GitHub with the same name, so they don't change anything. Facefish is a Linux-based backdoor to intercept the HSS session passwords and run code from the controlled infrastructure of the attackers. After the launch, they save a library or so, add it to the SSH, and then they relaunch it. We found SSH to 1200. This was the name we found. And we used our similarity technology. It lets us see commonality in files based on fuzzy hashing. And this technology will help us a lot to highlight some of the milestones. So we find a similar backdoor fish, which also goes to the attacker's command center with this domain name. And we can see it in many attacks of the group, and it's also well known in the community from the public reports. So we can conclude that Facefish is part of their toolkit. Exploitation. They use a lot of web shells in some web servers and web apps they attack. The names are different. There are no any patterns here, and they are quite straightforward. This slide shows the remailer to send emails from the email address you want. And there are various one-string solutions for RC, for taking remote files, and so on. All this is available from GitHub. So the users, these attackers, they use what's available. And in some attacks, we also saw that they use reverse shells, and they are small L files, and they use syscalls, sysconnects in Linux to connect port 8092 from the command service of the attackers, and they open the shell. Okay, persistence. This is quite straightforward again. Power exploit, which is a well-known framework, module power view, and they add their domain accounts, they modify various ACLs with objects and groups, and they also change the passwords of domain users. And despite all that, they use the net utility, for instance. So they create groups, users, they add groups, and so on. Okay, the schedule tasks. So they're the key method for persistence. We see here three types of scheduled tasks, and this includes the legitimate names, which are masked as services like Yandex Update Microsoft, and so on. The second type would be tasks with some crazy names, which show that this is destructive, like det1 and det2, and also this tasks which are exploitations of an open source framework like Metasploit, MPAC, and so on, with these strange names. And most of them show that this is destructive. They launch wipers, scripts, and encryption software or ransomware. Then they also establish services, and they go the classical approach. They use HQLM, control services with the same pattern, but one persistent thing is that they start the NG-ROC service almost in every attack. So it hardly changes, and it is their signature way. So you can see the obfuscated thing, which is a PowerShell downloader, which is decrypted when run. Then it loads the Kubint backdoor, and then they have the pager cobble strike. So they persist quite strongly. Defense evasion. No reinventing the wheel for these guys. They used some planned or scheduled tasks in PowerShell. They launch a util, which has some keys. It goes through all the logs, and to the same cycle, it gives the same util this to be deleted. And PowerShell can be used for this. And they go through RDP, so they need to wipe their logs. Here is the script used by these attackers to wipe the user registry branches and trees. They also wipe their file default RTP. This is their final successful session, and they also wipe the recent folder. Defense evasion. They turn off protective security solutions. Here is a script to kill Sophos security. So using VMI, they enumerate all the system processes, the host. They find Sophos, then they use terminate to kill it. And the netlogon domain has a file mentioning whether the script is successful or not. And you can see the defender at the bottom. You can see the command they launch on behalf of the PowerShell. And there they get MPF reference with the fail disable module, so they see which Windows Defender modules they switched off. So they also masquerade tasks. Sometimes they go bluntly without masking anything. Sometimes they try to mask system processes and files. They also use modifications of group policies. Our investigation shows some artifacts of rolled out a group of ransomware and vipers, so they were rolled out through host using group policies. You can see the hashes and verdicts of this malware. Okay, command and control. Well, we spent quite some time looking at the infrastructure, what they do. We built some graphs, as you can see, and we concluded that the major C2 framework is cobbled. Here you can see an example of the HTTP session. They supported with the HTTP stager, and we have quite a lot of AOCs like that. We have cobbled hashes, domains, IP addresses. We saw all of that and quite a lot of it. And the funny thing is the ingress tool transfer, the technique they use. You know, they send to the host everything they need. The power view, in this case, they use system get and kernel, so they just directly take it from the GitHub and they bring the PowerShell module to the infrastructure. Okay, Nikita will talk about the next phase. Well, all the things mentioned, so I can see many familiar faces who've gone through many incidents. I see many people who research all this. So it doesn't sound new, does it? So there's hacktivists, there's attackers, they use these old beaten tools, but still they succeed. Okay, but that's just the beginning of the story. The next pivoting stage. What is it about? Well, you need pivoting to get access to closed segment of the network. What did they do? So they like these pivoting tools like Grok, teasing, which is quite popular, by the way. So hacktivists use it, and there was a surge of using this utilities. So with hacktivist APT groups, agent APT groups, what do? They start with their first vector, Alexander talked about, then they reach a machine, and in the company, then they bring the ngrok, and they show that the exam masked process, and they also put there the configuration file. As a result, the attackers built an RDP tunnel, port 3389, to the machine, to their own machine, which is somewhere at a host. And there are quite a lot of machines like that with the ngrok. The artifact, please remember this, it is mentioned in the internet. So when you have the RDP logs, and you have the 2125 event, and when there is an RDP connect to your machine, you also have the source IP where this connect comes from. In this case, there is no connect. It must mean that there is a tunnel in infrastructure. If your admins are not using these tools, this is not exactly good. Okay, discovery is happening inside the infrastructure, so they use Power View and Power Exploit for this. Okay, just as usual, we see the things around, and then we proceed. Another interesting thing gaining momentum is the ADPs utility, and all these Ps tools are quite convenient. You just press the button, and it brings you all the vectors you can exploit with your level of authorization. They also use Blackhound and so on. So you have seen this mentioned before. Okay, elevating privileges. This is getting interesting. Okay, dealing with ACL, well, these attacks are not often seen. Usually this is about pentests or red teaming, and hacktivists and APTs, they started loving it quite recently. So they take the power exploit, as you can see here. So here's what they want, add domain object ACL, also the group called hackers. They give all the rights to the users. So now hackers can do a lot of things. And then this group users can do a lot with the DC. This can be the domain, and they can do whatever they like. This is an extremely unfortunate configuration of rights, but it is still there, and you should prevent this from happening. Execution. Attackers use CMD, they use scripts. Please remember this net logon, domain scripts, Intel folder. This is the conspiracy theory. We can see it with APT, with activists, so everybody likes it. Some funny things. We can see human mistakes here. The bottom right corner shows that they make mistakes. They say import, then import, then they try where to send it, then the PowerShell won't launch. They say set execution policy bypass. Only after that they can do it. So they are manually typing this through their console. Okay, Alexander talked about the scheduler. So all the payload at the impact stage is launched through various tasks, wipers, ransomware. From the directories we'll talk about later. Dumping. Well, this is SAM security system in Windows, so they do dumping through ADS util, so they get to the domain controller, and then they can go through the whole infrastructure. Our hackers also like mimikatz. They like it in any shape and form. exe, envoy, PS1, sysdrive, and so on. But they changed the name of mimikatz. They called the calculator. So you can see the calculator exe, but you can see the icon is the same. If you go to the calculator and see mimikatz, I think this is food for thought. Okay, they also look for various passwords, so password exe and external password depro exe is also used quite often. Okay, lateral movement. And so this is quite interesting. If they have rights in the domain, then they'll use passexec, and then UPP session, and in Linux they use sh. Then we'll talk about out. Alexander will talk about artifacts. Try to remember the names of the files, because when we bring these chairs together, you might enjoy this. Yeah, I'll try to remind you of the things worth remembering. Okay, the final phase of the unified kill chain is the out phase. So it means that they take the data they collect, then they export the data, and then they have some impact. It usually happens after the cherry stage, when they have reached everything they want, and then they start doing the dirty things. Collection. Nothing out of the ordinary here. They gather everything which can be stolen from the system, including the local and network disks. They use the find str utilities to get documents based on patterns if they haven't found something based on names, and they also get the passwords of the network adapters in the Wi-Fi networks. They also gather this data. Some interesting things. They download the Telegram folder. What makes it interesting? Apart from cached media information, it has stickers, pictures, and messages. There are session files there and encryption keys as well. So when they copy and exfiltrate this folder, they get a valid Telegram session without having to put in the login and password. This is quite interesting. They go with the valid credentials into the infrastructure, and they leave the infrastructure with the valid credentials. They use these telegrams so that inside the organization they can exchange messages with the victims posing as valid users. Then we have exfiltration. Apart from going through the FTP clients like FileZero, they also use drag and drop, bluntly through the web browser to exfiltrate everything they have collected and put into the zip archives, and they go to the call storage like mega drop-in files and so on. So this is again straightforward and blunt, but it still works. Let's talk about the impact stage, the most interesting thing. So they use logbit builders, which have been leaked, just like anyone. They encrypt these builders using the passwords, which makes it more difficult to analyze this. And so they launch the samples using passwords. This slide shows the typical names of this group, so the usual names for the samples, and the directories they use: program, data, and net logon. Let's remember this. And then they roll out through the scheduled tasks where you need to put in the password. So we used our attribution systems, and we can see that they are logbits, 79%. We also run dynamic analysis, and we see that the sample behaves just like any sample which is built based on the leaked builder. Okay, the configuration of this ransomware is not an issue. They can switch on and off the built-in modules, like killing processes, services, encrypting, network shares, local disks, and so on and so forth. So we can see the list of the services they stop to do encryption. Then we have non-encrypted directories, and there are some files, auto-run files, the system files, and exe files, and so on. And the list of terminated processes is quite standard. Some databases, the Office package, and all the things which can prevent you from encrypting the files. Okay, here is what they do. The attackers use the PowerShell to bring their samples to the domain controller, to the netlogon network shader. And they launch their PowerShell script at the same time, which will modify the group policies for the whole domain. When they are updated, they send all the schedules to all the hosts. And from the netlogon to the C program data, they put their encryption software, and then they encrypt the data with the password used by the attackers. In one of the attacks, we also saw that they used another chaos builder. So this is another leaked builder ransomware uses. So we found this builder, and our attribution system shows it. The high level of attribution to the chaos, and our statistical analysis shows direct artifacts of the fact that the wrong doers here just took this sample. So please remember the sample in the chaos. We didn't find anything in the behavioral analysis which would be different from the standard builder. They switch off the system backup. They remove shadow copies using the MIG and SSAdmin and so on. This is the classical chaos tool this group is using. Okay, we'll proceed with the impact. Wipers come into the stage. They choose whom they encrypt and then wipe. Sometimes they encrypt and then they wipe. Yeah, sometimes it happens like that. Here you can see two wipers, Endurance and Shamuna. These are their names. They are launched through the same scheduled tasks. And again, this hackers Endurance is available from GitHub. And the sample of Endurance of these attackers works just like any Endurance. It changes the boot section. Then it goes around all the directories apart from windows, and it changes metadata, renames them, then deletes them, and adds empty bits, and then uses shutdown to switch off the system. By analyzing the code, we see that this endurance is exactly the same we can obtain from the GitHub.
Shamoon is a modified version, but not in terms of behavior. Behavior-wise, it works pretty much the same, but for some reason, the attackers decided to modify various Shamoon's functions. With pretty much the same action, but they somehow decided to rename them. Still, some Shamoon artifacts are visible, and the last section here demonstrates a string that refers us back to the classic Shamoon. Here's how it works, pretty much the same. Attackers deliver to netlogon a wiper. They launch a script that updates policies. They put the wiper file in the same path, and then on the already encrypted systems, the wiping process starts as a scheduled task. Okay, and let's talk about connection with other chairs, and that is the crux of our presentation.
Запоминаете множество фактов. Вот помните тот мем, где чувак там
Okay.
с красными стрелочками на карте стоит, вот такой жих, нахрен уже.
Remember a meme where a guy stands in front of a dashboard with red arrows? Those were us during the nights when we were looking for all of those connections. Let's start with connections to Blackjack. Also, an activist group. It's available on Telegram, and they can read about their exploits. We have encryptors, and the purpose is to encrypt the data and to do something with an organization. On the left, is it on the left? Yes, on the left, you can see the encryptors of 12, and on the right, the encryptors of Blackjack. Alexander talks about our similarity technology. It's commercially available, and it's based on fuzzy hashing technology. Just to give a straightforward explanation, we take a hash, it's broken down into components, and we look for similarities between components. If you take built log bits that you found somewhere from an activist group, the solution would be able to find the exact log bit build. Okay, let's take these couple of incidents. Let's take the first file with a log bit encryptor. Let's put it into similarity, and in the bottom line, you can see a table where we see the similarity level. The confidence is 9 out of 11. 9 is quite good. And we can see the first similar file. And where do we see it? We see it in 12. The logbit encryptor and the Blackjack encryptor are very much similar. This might be a coincidence, but let's continue exploring. On the left, again, we have 12. On the right, Blackjack. Two different incidents that happened in Russia. On the left, you have the hash, which is eng.exe that we asked you to think about. And on the right, we have the wiper used by Blackjack. And here we have information that these two objects in two different incidents are packed into the same archive, 37E here and 37E there. So in different areas of Russia, from different groups, we get the same archive name. Again, that might still be a coincidence. But let's look at further coincidences. All the directories, the netlogon, the sysvol domain, there is 100% coincidence with very minor differences. The methods that are used, that's ngrok almost everywhere. Let's remember that. Linked to other groups. The history of this hacktivist group, Shadow, Comet, Darkstar, and then 12, has been around the community for a while. And again, a lot of coincidences. Net logon, sysvol domain, comet.exe, darkstar.exe, shadow.exe. More coincidences. We're not hinting at anything. Let's take a logbit file that we came across from 12 in one of the incidents. It was called at the time comet.exe. And here where it sits in a program data file, we use the similarity technology. We take the random incident, and we get pretty much the same thing, the same logbits, the same program data, etc. And so the cycle closes. Let's do some attribution, but light touch, assumption-based. There was an incident also in Russia by 12, and some IPs were found that were used by attackers, and the IPs were all from VPN providers of VPS. And one of the addresses stood out, and it leads to a location at the bottom. The hypothesis is that a VPN was down and they connected with their real IP. And sometimes, as our colleagues noted as well, they sometimes had issues with keyboard layouts. Okay, conclusions. So what we have told you, that is addressing the problem of what has not been widely available on the network. So if you test good SOC processes, if you have threat hunting, if you install EDR and things like that, that could save you, because the data that we're sharing with you, you would be able to uncover quite a lot of hunts. But if your admins don't use ngrok or tunnels, whatever, ban it right at the firewall level, and then you would create problems for the attackers of moving around your infrastructure. And why 12 chairs? Well, the name of the group was 12. Why 12? We don't know. Maybe there were 12 people. Maybe then later went to work in different clusters. But now we explore one of the clusters and we find links to other clusters. Maybe we'll prepare another report when we'll be able to match this group to the other quote-unquote shares. And what we have presented to you is available here. The report paper was out on Tuesday or Monday, and it also talks about ransomware, about CVEs in Russia. You're welcome to read, and please you're welcome to leave some feedback, and that would be the end of our report.
Я единственное верну вон туда, чтобы все успели скачать.
Да.
Так,
Нет, иди сюда, наоборот, наконец-то.
Еще победитель надо выбрать. Так, первый вопрос. Удалось ли исследовать сетевую структуру?
First question. Have you looked at the attacker's infrastructure? Yes, in part. But as I explained, our colleagues made publicly available their IPs, etc. You can Google it. What artifact showed that attackers used drag and drop?
Сейчас здесь у нас про то, что они используют drag and drop в одном из расследований.
In one of the investigations,
у нас в логах засветилась незакрытая вкладка браузеров.
In our logs, we had a browser tab. that led to drop me files.
Странный вопрос, я его прочитаю, если ты поймешь, скажи.
I'll read this question.
В реальном времени для закидывания приманок для хакеров.
Если осуществить атаку в реальном времени,
Have you been able to monitor an attack in real time? I don't understand this question, sorry. What was the goal of the hacktivists? Were they demanding money for decryption?
Мы встречаем случаи, что иногда требовали,
Sometimes they did.
преследовали какие-то свои цели.
Sometimes
Там, возможно,
they
то есть 50-50.
pursued their own agenda.
которые мы говорили,
And by the way, the reference to the chairs, the fact that the group had many alliances, and the fact and what they
кого-то было им выгодно атаковать с целью публично
published in terms of their attacks, that was not all the universe that they attacked.
В общем, цели как-то не убирают по-своему. Здесь непонятна мотивация.
So their motivation is not very clear.
Ну, он игрок везде, и набор инструментов, которые мы перечислили на слайде.
What
в начале development.
tools the similarity found?
одинаковый такой.
That was ngrok, and paths were very similar. Even without the similarity technology, you could see that different groups use the same paths, use the same tools,
А в Singularity мы закидывали
and in similarity, we put mostly encryptors to find those
Наши коллеги уже все писали.
wipers.
фокусироваться именно на TTPs.
Так, ну здесь вопрос все.
Okay, and
Ну да, все.
Так,
those were all the questions.
так, все, надо выбрать, получается. А, еще отправлен? Ну, зачитайте прямо.
Да, я думаю, прям так.
Дайте микро, давайте зачитаю. Спасибо. Так.
Нет, вот.
Какую первую... Так, парни, а какую первую группу или инфру АПТшников каждый из вас так дал? Ну...
Слушай, какую первую АПТ-группу мы нашли?
What was the first APT group that we were able to identify?
Ну, на моей практике, в моей карьере была...
For me, in my career,
Винтия, она же АПТ-41.
we had a huge history with APT-41. Yes, and the same for me. I was a SOC analyst, and I was able to observe the actions of that group firsthand. So, VTI or APT-41.
Годами. Ну, думаю, все. Так, вопрос надо выбрать, да? Нам надо выбрать.
Okay, and that's it. Do we have any other questions?
Вопрос... обновять надо. Сейчас. Вот, все вижу, да. Как они соотносятся с Cyber-Альянс или другими группировками? Ответ – не знаю.
What is their relationship to Cyber Alliance or other groups? The answer is I don't know, but it's probably we don't know yet.
АПТ сейчас на волне.
What APT threats are most trending? The reports that we have shared, and take a look at the previous reports on Asian APTs. They are very relevant for Russia. It's 37 pages. It's a manual. It's a textbook.
Да, слушаю. Да, давайте. Ну, сейчас решают.
Нет, сейчас дадут.
Let's wait for the microphone.
Ну, говорите вопрос.
Нормально. Я правильно понимаю, что данная группировка...
Do I understand it correctly that this group
на нуле?
is mostly of danger for companies who have almost zero security? But if you have EDR or a firewall, well, yes, that's a bigger threat for companies that have less than medium security.
Ну, есть компании, в которых, например, запрещены запуски неизвестных программ тем же самым Касперским, да? Там не требуется KYC.
But there are companies where you can't run
Ниже.
code by Kaspersky products, for example.
В нескольких инцидентах было такое, что
In a few incidents,
к примеру, через подрядчика.
attackers had access through a contractor. So remember the trusted relationship breach. They use a trusted account, and you want to trace, you want to understand. So a good set of hands in your CM would help.
Блокаунда уже как бы...
Well, even Kaspersky antivirus should detect Mimikat's launch, so that they would exploit companies that don't have even that.
Понятно, спасибо.
Обновидно.
Так.
Последний, наверное.
Да, наверное, у нас 41 секунда.
Let's take one last question.
Вот, да, хороший вопрос. Телеграм-канал 12 был удален. Как думаете, из-за чего? Они последние...
12's Telegram channel was deleted. Do you know why?
Другую хакерскую группировку.
They started in the recent post cosplaying another APT data, and they started publishing PDN data of particular individuals, and after that the channel was deleted. But we have suspicions that they decided to rebrand, and they may be reborn under a different name.
Так, и все. Ребят, 0 секунд, извините, еще много вопросов.
Okay, we are getting more questions, but we've run out of time. Which is the best one?
Вот этот такой артефакт выполнил драг-н-дроп файл. Ну, хорош?
Ну, давай, да.
Максим Кенникс. Макс Кенникс.
That was about the drag and drop. Maxim,
Вот молодой человек.
are you in this room? Yes, this gentleman here.
Все, ребят, спасибо.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.